All right, we've got some skittish markets, a lot of red in the last week or so, but we got some exciting times ahead. Nvidia reports earnings tomorrow. I think that's going to have a big impact on markets. We've got some Tesla news to talk about, specifically around graphite. But I think the question that is front and center on everyone's mind is Bradford, may I meet you? I can't hear you.
What's that mean?
Oh, okay. Did you not hear this Bill Ackman thing?
No, I didn't catch what you said. You bugged for a
Oh,
second.
it's killer. I said, may I meet you?
What's that mean?
All right, we're going off the rails early here. I thought almost everyone caught this Bill Ackman meme recently. He was giving advice on how men can pick up ladies, and he says the killer pickup line is just asking, "May I meet you?" And there's been a whole lot of activity on that, at least in my X feed. So maybe you're just more focused on important business things, and I'm wasting time on Bill Ackman tweets.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work.
I'm very skeptical too, but it has elicited very strong opinions both directions.
All right, so before we lose everyone, there's this big no China push from Tesla. We're going to hit that. We do want to talk about a vision for Tesla, 5-year vision. People are focused on the near term. We want to look at further out, and also for Tesla Energy 5 years out. We want to take a gander and see what we see what we think. So let's get right into it. Matt, what's this whole no China thing about?
Yeah, so as many people are aware, the Trump administration is coming down hard on China with tariffs explicitly, but then also with a lot of kind of non-tariff trade barriers. So Tesla, sourcing a lot of their cells and other components from China, obviously needs to take this pretty seriously. So what was announced today is a deal for sourcing graphite with a company called Syrah Resources, which is an Australian mining company, and they've run a plant in Louisiana. So they're going to be able to buy U.S. processed graphite sourced from Mozambique, which kind of eliminates at least this one area of the Tesla supply chain. There's many others that I think Tesla needs to figure out a solution for. I think probably chief in my mind is on battery cells, but let's stick with the Syrah news today. How did this strike you?
First, I wonder like what happened to Novonix as far as graphite, and what's going on with China with battery materials. It's a bit concerning. Does Tesla need to switch completely from China, and are they getting the wet cathode for 4680 from China? It raises more questions than solves answers. So I think it'd be cool if they can do different sourcing and not be beholden to China. China's been using their position to hold different companies hostage with various battery materials, but also rare earths and other things.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's not only in the EV space that this is becoming an issue. A lot of companies that we're researching, we're kind of coming across this issue of U.S. based manufacturers are becoming a huge priority across many different areas of the supply chain. So I think it's pretty encouraging, honestly, to see the amount of new capital investment going on at U.S. facilities for like true manufacturing instead of just like little bits of the value chain to actually get more and more of that here in the U.S. I think it's just a good thing geopolitically for the longer term. Yeah. So on the Novonix piece, that was kind of funny because that's a company that was wildly talked about many years ago. It sounds like from the bit of research that we were just doing before we jumped on, they're supposed to have that Chattanooga plant. It sounds like they're still planning to get that up and running, but the Stellantis terminated its big offtake agreement. So if you look at the stock chart, it's down pretty significantly in the last 5 years or so. It looks like a lot of companies actually kind of post COVID, boom, where all these companies with a lot of hope and promise had high valuations. And but yeah, losing a big offtake deal like that, I think it's just one of the many victims of the EV volumes at the large OEMs not coming in anywhere near the kind of original volumes that they were targeting.
Maybe what Novonix is wanting to provide is not up to snuff with what Tesla wants. I know legacy auto, their standards can be lower for some of these parts and materials, but maybe Tesla could step in and buy or like just whatever deal that Stellantis got rid of. Maybe Tesla can choose to take that graphite. It sounds like the Syrah plant in Louisiana isn't really up to speed yet. So it's not like they can produce right away, and Tesla may need a lot of graphite.
Yeah, I think this is kind of a all ships are rising sort of thing for suppliers in this space. Not to say that it's going to be easy. I think some of them are not going to make it, but we had the thesis years ago that EV demand is just going to continue to increase because more people were going to realize that it's a better product. That thesis fell flat on its face and was proven wrong, at least in the short term. But I definitely believe that we are in the middle of a secular push towards more EVs, and that will become kind of the de facto. And if that's true, then we'll need a lot more graphite from a lot more sources, and primarily US based, if possible. So I do think that creates some opportunities for suppliers in the space that are possible to get their facilities up and running. But it's hard. I mean, it's hard to get a new plant up and running. We saw this with Tesla many, many, many times. And that's with a crack engineering team that's top of the game. Competition from China is extremely fierce. They've spent a lot of time building up industries that were overlooked by the rest of the world. And then all of a sudden we woke up and realized, we actually need rare earth processing capability, because that's a key geopolitical strength to have. So I think we're in this toddler phase where we've got to kind of stumble through getting some of these plants up and running. But I do believe the demand is going to be there in the medium to long term.
So I did see the motor for the Cybercab. I was not allowed to take a picture of it, and allegedly the Cybercab motor is not going to have rare earths, or they made us believe that the unbox process, the cars that were coming out after that were not going to use rare earths in their motors. It looked pretty small, so it didn't seem like they were sacrificing size of the motor. I'm guessing it's not super powerful. It is going to be a front motor, so it's going to be one motor in the front wheel drive. Is that what you call it?
I guess that is what you call it. Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the.
I wonder what other dependencies there are. They were getting a lot of chips from China a long time ago. This was 5 years ago. And in Europe, if you're trying to reduce dependency on China, in Europe, I think you need your batteries from China, because Europe, the battery supply chain really isn't set up.
Yeah, Europe's just kind of a mess in general, it seems. All the regulations there. I mean, what's happening with FSD is just, it's not actually criminal, but it feels criminal to me that it's just being strangled with all these regulations. BMW's, really crappy version of FSD is essentially what the rule book was made to mimic. Meanwhile, Tesla actually has the stats. They just dropped them this week of how safe these vehicles are, especially when driven on FSD. But the insane bureaucracy in Europe is just kind of holding back, deployment there. And it's I 100% believe it's costing lives. Tesla has billions of miles now. And if billions of miles of, and there are billions of miles that have a drastically lower fatality rate than US average. And so it stands to reason that deploying that into other geographies as quickly as possible, as long as those safety stats are being replicated, would actually save lives. So, this is one example of regulations just not only being like bad for the company as an investment, but I think just like truly bad for the welfare of its citizens.
We don't care about lives, Matt. We care about jobs.
You're an evil capitalist. Jobs, yeah. That is kind of funny, because I think it's probably there is some protectionism that's wanting to protect jobs there more so than lives, and that's like actually really sad when you when you think about it.
Yeah. So what Matt's talking about is the bureaucrats in Europe are working with the legacy auto in Europe, such as BMW, Mercedes, and Audi, or Volkswagen or whatever. They're working with them to design the rules, and they design the rules so that Tesla's current system will not work. So they're not rules that increase safety. The cars, for example, the cars change lanes extremely safely in a Tesla, but they design the rules so that the Tesla cannot auto lane change on European highways, or they make it difficult for it to happen and frustrating for the user. Yeah, so I am wondering to do China.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say yes, but I think like if I'm being honest with myself, like I don't really care that much about it as a consumer. Now, like, do I care about it as a citizen of the United States? Yeah, absolutely, and I want to foster that development. So, I do think it's a good thing, but it's it's going to come at a cost. I think we need to be kind of sober about, and it would be easier for you or me to kind of absorb some of these increases in cost than for your average consumer. So it's a bit of a bigger deal for although term, I think it also creates to be able to have some more geographic protection, and just kind of redundant supply chain to handle these.
Or 10,000 parts, and the slowest part is what slows down the whole production line. So I also wonder, will this cause a problem with part supply, and will it cause a slowdown in Tesla's growth?
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever know, because they're in the middle of this kick to growth. Maybe growth any year, but if we get anywhere close to Elon was in terms of goals for essentially producing 50% of vehicles next year, and then again following year, if we get percent, this tariff is, I don't know.
Questions on question for our viewers is, you pay for a U.S. only, would you pay it more if they got like all Chinese parts out of the Tesla? So curious what you all think.
This is something Jeff Lutz has been talking about too. I mean, I think that the biggest issue is that Tesla does a good chunk of the cells, so you are going from, I don't know, maybe $40 per kilowatt hour cells, quite that low, but like super close to something like $100 now. That's a really impact in your. Now there are some tax that are going to offset that, but it's just like you can go through the whole bill of materials for all the different components that are sourced there, and the rare, a lot of the rare earths in the motor, even like metal they'll have a hard time producing are there's like some random small metal that has 90% market share. So I think it's gonna take some time for Tesla to really kind of de-China their US based supply chain. I do think it's a good exercise to go through.
All right, so we're about to change subject, but we got this comment. Looking ahead are not easy. I definitely,
especially with the intro that banger intro that I let off with.
yeah, that was pretty good. So if you missed that, you can rewind all the way to the beginning and check that. Yeah. So Russ says do 1,000 or a couple thousand, but not 5,000. Would not pay that much extra to go the America, Tesla. America. Let's talk about beyond like next year. So looking further out, where Tesla can take things. So we're thinking about Robotaxi fully express in the U.S. market, beginning of AI 5 cars, maybe a couple years from now. Mm-hmm. Optimus, that manufacturing building should be made by the end of next year. Elon claims it'll be 1 million Optimus per year capacity, and then has a desire for 10 million per year, potentially from Texas. Elon's whining about chips, so having enough chips to make all those Optimus and all the Teslas.
He's whining about chips, but he's also like extremely invested in this, AI 5 design cycle right now, and AI 6. So it's kind of, it just feels like we're right on the precipice where like we're so close to the kind of promised land on AI for Tesla as an investment thesis, but like at the same time we're right in the middle of a lot of the painful parts of needing to validate the Robotaxi network in a lot of new cities and eventually pull the safety monitor out, doing a brand new version of FSD v14, which has some growing pains with it in terms of how smooth or not it is. And then they're going to, have to increase supply, which is going to have its own challenges kind of across the board, and like, get these new chips out. And then once AI 5 finally launches, then they're going to have to, figure out when and how to do the training and prioritize AI 5 FSD upgrades instead of AI 4. So like, there's going to be a lot of pain in the next couple of years, I think, for Tesla to execute on this huge strategy. So it's really easy to be enthusiastic about it. And I really am. But like, at the same time, like, they have to move mountains. There's a lot that has to be done.
Mm-hmm. So let's go there. Let's talk about Tesla moving some mountains. So Elon at the shareholder meeting said, or before that, they said 1,500 Teslas serving as robotaxis before year end. I believe 500 was Austin and 1,000 was Bay Area. Given the geography, I think 1,000 would make more sense in Bay Area. One, do you think they get there? Let's be very short term, and then what's it look like after that?
Maybe a month ago I would have said no, but I think it was just today. If not, it was very recently. They actually went fully public on the Robotaxi app. So I was on the wait list for Robotaxi for a long time, but now if I'm in Austin, I can actually go and use it. So that's a good sign. But I think ultimately it's going to come down to whether they pull the safety observers out, because what I don't think is going to happen is I don't think you're going to hire 1,500 safety monitors between now and year end and then like fire them in February. So do I think they'll pull the safety monitor out by year end? Probably not. If I had to just randomly pick a date, that's my P50 of where I think it'd be, I'd say like January 31st. They finally pull the monitors out, and so maybe we get to 1,500 shortly after that. Well, what is your mind saying on the short term? Is that a realistic goal or not?
It sounds about right. I'm optimistic with 14.2 that they'll get to a place where it's very comfortable. We already know it's really safe. Probably the biggest risk with version 14 of Tesla self-driving is leaves go across the road in front of the car.
Oh gosh,
the car
so
panics with the leaves and slows down too much, and you get rear-ended. Like, that's probably the biggest risk. so it's very safe. It's very circumspect around crosswalks and pedestrians. It's really frustrating, circumspect around stop sign. I think they'll fix that for 15.2. I think do that and it's possible. Then Tesla Robotaxi, probably Florida. I'm not sure in California, but the other states beyond just Texas and Florida, who are both states are very permissive when it comes to autonomous driving. Yeah. So you and I were working up some number million drivers. So we calculated that it was 400,000 robotaxis that would be needed to, be running full out, 300 miles a day to replace Uber. And that would be like a pretty extreme thing to happen. That would get a lot of attention. How soon do you think it's possible Tesla could get to that place? And is it regulations, cities that get in the way?
So I don't think regulation is going to be a limiting factor. I think the question is how soon could it happen? I'd say 20. They could that type of deal. And even if presumably there will be pockets where they're not allowed to operate, it seems like SD is there with the level of connection and everything like that. I get a lot of these. I'm switching my connection
here. Change it, Matt.
And shut up in the count. The overall TAM expands, and you could get to that type of level in 2027. So, I think the real question in my mind is just going to be user adoption. So, I think users are going to have a better product. They're going to say, okay, like this is a great way to travel, and I love that it's really a clear or a really amazing user experience. You can like watch Netflix, prices cheaper than an Uber, and you've got the privacy, all the that believe in. Like things are, and I've been talking the adopt
savings for people riding Robotaxi without like just giving away almost for free like they are now. So if people are struggling to hear us on the live stream, it seems like YouTube on the ball today.
Cloud Flare.
Right, so getting back, I think could struggle, but get meaningful savings. And are people left for commute, which sounds crazy. Like I use Uber and Lyft when I'm on vacation, when something's going on with my car, or maybe I want to eat, not worry about like pulled over way home. Like that's normal. Like that's how I think of Uber, but most people for their commute can't afford more cars. So I think what Tesla can do is when you're not paying for a driver, you're not paying for their time and energy, you're not paying to insure against their maybe they don't behave properly in the car or whatever. You don't even have to insure against that because there's no driver that whose behavior you need to insure against. Once you do all that, you can drop the cost. And I estimate that someone who's in that situation could save $5, easily $5 a day. And if you're working 25 days a month, that could be $125 a month. I think that'll help adoption for people who like do the math and figure it out. And maybe someone they know tries it out, so they're not the first person to try out the Tesla Robotaxi in their circle, so they don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the misconceptions that a lot of people still have about this rideshare space is that it's like a, a treat for the upper middle class, people when, they're traveling or, having a special event or something like that.
Mhm.
I was talking to a client who does a lot of Uber rides, this week, and he was like super bullish on Robotaxi, essentially because of this very thing. He's like, they're going to be able to undercut on price, and if you're basically taking 2 hours worth of somebody's work for an Uber ride on a
Mhm.
daily commute, like that's horrible economics for them. And so
Yeah.
even if they're like very clearly not a tech adopter or like a tech enthusiast, they'll do it just because they'll be able to save maybe 20% of their of their daily salary, just
Yeah.
because of how expensive the commuting cost is. So I think I'm optimistic about that, and I think people who actually drive for Uber seem to be, in my experience, a little bit more bullish on Robotaxi for that very reason.
Mhm.
But I'm still a little circumspect, I think, just because the human element's very hard to predict of how are they going to adopt to this new technology, this brand new market that's essentially being created out of thin air. Um, I just we don't really have a whole lot of precedent for what that's going to look like.
Yeah. I worry that some cities will look to oppose Teslas. Um, but with the taxi market, with the rideshare market, cities have taxes that they charge. There's trip fees, there might be per mile fees. Um, so Robotaxi should be very profitable for many cities. Uh, and if you're worried about, excuse me, if you're worried about traffic, um, maybe Tesla rolls out the Robovan,
Yeah.
so that when you have people riding a common route, they can hook into the Robovan, they ride the Robovan to another hub, and then they hop back into a Robotaxi to continue their trip.
Yeah, it's that whole
Especially
hub
on
and
the
spoke
highways.
model.
Hub and spoke, yep, just like the airlines do. Um, so I think there's some ways around some of the resistance that could occur. Um, so 5 years from now, you think that Tesla could potentially get to 400,000 a couple of years from now? It's pretty aggressive.
Well, I mean, they'll have the supply to be able to do that, right? So the
Mhm.
question then purely comes down to demand. Um, and we've done a huge amount of kind of thinking through this, both bottom up, like what's Tesla's supply, when can they actually meet that, as well as top down. Okay, like one of the things that we've got in our model is, all right, what price are we assuming for FSD, for robotaxi miles, and then we're assuming that comes down over time,
Right.
because what the key metric that we have in there is like the cumulative fleet build miles. What is that number as a percentage of Uber's overall miles driven? So as you get close to 100% of Uber's miles, you have to like be meaningfully undercutting on price. So that's how I'm trying to keep myself honest with the assumptions is, all right, when you get to hundreds of thousands of vehicles, in order to expand that TAM, close to 100% of Uber's TAM, and then eventually beyond that, you have to um, assume that price is low enough to generate some elasticity in that demand. But this is something where ARC's done a huge amount of work where I forget the exact numbers, but they found some like massive elasticity in like robotaxi pricing, and how that translates to the overall TAM. And that's something that you actually highlighted also from Uber's tests historically.
Yeah, what they found was versus current pricing, if you drop all the way to a dollar a mile, the demand grows by 20 fold, 20 times. So that was a test they did back in like 2021, something like that, where they offered that. I think potentially like Tesla could get people hooked with low fares, but then increase the fares as people find that it's much nicer to be in a car by yourself. You can talk with with your relative as loud as you want. You can argue with them. You can play music, uh, on your own playlist in the back of the Tesla. watch your own Netflix movies. Yeah, maybe you also do that on your phone, but it could be hooked into the car speakers. Like, it should be a much better experience than having the Uber driver or the Lyft driver. But I think initially you're right. People won't get it, and they'll need to experience it to understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're talking about over 400,000 robotaxis potentially, that the supply will be there, the technology will be there in 2 years. And then, looking out 5 years, it very easily could be over 2 million in the US. That sounds like a really big number to me. Farzad probably thinks we're too low there, but you could easily go over 2 million, probably over 10 million in the US. Tesla would have a reason to increase production in the US. I feel like this 5-year vision, at least with auto, is a US story.
Yeah.
But allegedly they have some approval coming in China soon.
Yep. Yeah. I think, in terms of like underwriting, like what are we looking at in terms of, assessing the potential value of the company? Yeah, I look at it only from a US based, robotaxi market. Because I think that's the only one where we have some, fairly clear regulatory, kind of pathway on what that's going to look like. So, I think it's going to kind of play out in stages. We already spoke about some of them, but, eventually I think it's going to become the case where people actually opt for just robotaxi service instead of owning a car. Especially if you're not driving a huge number of miles, that can be like very cost efficient. And just like the headache of going through the maintenance, and like insurance is so expensive and such a hassle to deal with. And, there's a lot of people, our producer, Jordan, is one of them, who's just like, doesn't really want to own a car. And would be really nice if there was a reliable robotaxi that was always there, within 5 or 10 minutes, and it could kind of handle everything for you. If you're doing that, paying a couple $100 a month instead of like, having to pay thousands of dollars and get a loan and just go through that entire hassle. I think that's going to appeal, especially to the younger generation, who is both more price sensitive and more tech forward. But eventually, as that adoption kind of increases, then I think like more and more people will just realize that, this does make sense. And honestly, it might be like a barbell thing where like the super old drivers who are too dangerous to drive, and the younger ones who are just more tech focused, they may be the kind of base. And then, people like you and I might actually oddly be least likely to join, just like when you got young kids and car seats and stuff like that. It's you want to have the comfort of your own vehicle.
Yeah. Also, if you're young, you just get crushed on car insurance premiums. Just absolutely
that's a huge factor.
Yeah, absolutely crushed. There's also parking if you work in the city, or if you live in the city, not having to deal with parking. So I think that'll drive some of the economics as well.
Well, let's talk about that insurance thing a little bit more, because I think that's worth underlining. Like, I mean, if you're say 20-year-old driver or something like that, the statistics show you are like extremely unsafe, and so therefore they're going to charge you an arm and a leg just because you're not a very great driver yet. If you go from that sort of dynamic to all of a sudden your insurance cost is baked into the robotaxi, which is, let's say, 10 times safer than a human. So it's like a fraction of what you'd be paying. I mean, like the economics of that are just going to be extremely hard to compete with. And so this is your most tech forward, your most expensive to insure cohort, that it has the smallest kind of personal balance sheet because they're just starting off in life. Like, I think adoption among that cohort is going to be extremely high for all those reasons.
Yep. My daughter's 11. I don't know if she necessarily needs a driver's license. I think Tesla is going to get there within a few months, as far as how good the software is going to be, as far as taking you from driveway to parking spot or to drop off, and being able to do it safely. I did see a chart. I don't know if it's real, and maybe Jordan, you can find this. I did put it in our chat where the miles per critical intervention has gone from like under 500 on these trackers with version 13 all the way to like nearly 5,000 miles on version 14.
Yeah, it's a step change.
It is a huge step change. It's meaningful, and I think Tesla is where they need to be. So yeah, this is it. I'm not sure what site this was. Jeff Lutz highlighted this. He's like, they're pretty noisy before, and now we're not hearing anything from the community tracker folks.
Yeah. Well, and this is something that you and I think have been critical of in the past, just because like what is someone's definition of a critical disengagement? Like, I mean, there's stuff that is, maybe a mistake, but it wasn't actually imminently about to cause a car crash. And I think just based on our own experience, the previous versions, I think we're nowhere near potentially causing a car crash once every 500 miles if you left them alone. So to us, just like it didn't pass the smell test of where that data was. So I think there's probably some noise in how a critical disengagement is defined in there. We always, I think you and I probably thought it was about an order of magnitude higher in the past. So instead of every 500 miles, it was probably every 5,000. And so now if we're essentially getting an order of magnitude improvement from that level, then maybe it's actually safer than the human now.
Yeah. Maybe the only thing that'll slow it down is, allegedly there's a big software rewrite needed to either bring the 10 times bigger parameter model, or to bring the thinking to it, where it's thinking with words, and you're doing this thing that Ashok highlighted. So where it's like the stream of thought as it's seeing things on the road. Maybe that takes longer, but I do see in 5 years a wild vision for Tesla Robotaxi, but also FSD should be so good that I think Elon will be right. Like, people will be able to text while driving. Maybe for insurance purposes or liability purposes, you're still sitting in the front driver's seat, but you're allowed to do some work, and maybe they notify you if they think there's a sketchy situation, you need to pay attention.
Yeah. All right, I've got to put this comment up here. It's like so darkly true. So Martin says more miles without accidents is nice, but unsupervised FSD is better. That is just like so true. So like, we can prove in this, the safety reports have been out there for a very long time, showing that like monitored FSD was significantly safer, than unsupervised drivers just in general. But nobody cared. Like, uptick in FSD has been very poor. But people don't actually care about safety when they're choosing whether or not to buy FSD, I think, for the most part, or at least it's not driving a meaningful amount of like Tesla purchases. But when you can actually, unmonitor and like, just watch Netflix or whatever in your car, send text messages, I think that actually is the thing. So as sad as it is to admit that's true, I think that is actually the truth, that like that's the real game changer, not necessarily how safe it is.
Yep. There are a lot of normies that I've given rides to with FSD, and one of their questions is, do I have to pay attention? So I do think that's something that casuals are looking for. When I say casuals, I mean like non-hardcore Tesla owners.
Yeah. The safety is like.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that the safety is kind of like this binary thing. Like you have to get it to a certain level in order to have unsupervised. But that's not the reason people are going to want it. They're going to want it so they can, text and, do all the other stuff. So it's, I think I've had it backwards in my mind a while, that like, oh, as soon as they get like safe enough, people will flock to it. And it's like, no, like people don't actually care about not getting into an accident, because it's not something that happens to them very often. So they don't think it's something that they need to protect against. But when you can actually change their life in the small things that they see every day, as opposed to preventing the one very serious thing that might happen to them, every 20 years or something like that, that's actually a selling point.
let's talk about robots in the world.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so I don't know if I would trust Jan LeCun with my money. He's a great researcher with Meta. I think he was critical in one of the discoveries is related to AIs. I think it's like convolutional neural networks, and this is a long time ago. And he seems more like an academic, but he's been on a team that where Meta has created Llama and some other things. So he should get some credit, but it feels like he doesn't have like the business sense or the real world engineering that Elon has. So I don't know if I trust him with my money, but he's wanting to get into real world AI with robots in the world, and I think Tesla is going to be a huge leader in this. And Matt and I are talking about Tesla having more than 400,000 Teslas operating as robotaxis in the US. When they're operating as robotaxis, they're potentially doing 300 miles a day each. So that's a lot of miles.
A lot of miles and a lot of moolah.
Yeah. So I think that's 120 million miles per day, just from those 400,000 robotaxis. That's a lot of miles. You're collecting a lot of data, a lot of information. But then you have Optimus coming on the end of next year, the factory in California, which, by the way, I think they are having in California because that's where a lot of the AI engineers are. I don't think they have enough in Austin to do that. But then you're going to get so many more robots in the world, provided you can get the chips for all those Optimus.
Yeah, I mean it's an exciting future. The kind of test ramp that they're going to do in Fremont. I mean it kind of reminds me of what they were doing at the Cato Road facility with 4680. It's like you want to kind of start small and figure out what the problems are with your equipment, with your manufacturing process, and then get to true massive scale at the Texas factory. But yeah, like this is I love to do earnings reports for like the next couple of quarters and kind of look at like production and deliveries. But ultimately, like the future you just outlined, that's why we're invested in Tesla. It's going to be hard for them to like figure out how to do this, but I do believe they'll figure it out. Their AI chops are like totally next level. Elon's been talking about real world AI for a very long time, and now all of a sudden it's like the topic du jour, and we've got Jan LeCun and Jeff Bezos and everyone else being like, you know what? We should focus on real world AI. It's like,
humanoid robots and AI
chatbots
that's using video in the real world with sensor data.
Yeah,
who's doing that in size right now with 7 million cars on the road?
I know, and like people are getting so excited about Nvidia's, talking about autonomy and all that, and I'm just like, I don't know. I mean, Tesla has a community, so it's not like nobody's paying attention. But for a very long time, nobody was paying attention, and I think even still, a lot of the talking heads, like on CNBC and everything, are, way more excited about these other companies when Tesla has like the like full the nuts. If to use a poker analogy, like they've got the best hand where they've got the AI chops, they've got the talent, they've got the compute power. They've got the data set from all the vehicles, and they've got the manufacturing prowess and the chip design capabilities. It's like, how do you compete with all of those things? Like, Nvidia is not going to actually develop the cars and put them out in the real world. So what is GM going to use an Nvidia model, and that's going to somehow be better, safer than Tesla's? I don't think so. Like, I love Nvidia. I think they're undervalued still, but I don't know. To me, it's a lot more sizzle for some of these other companies, and Tesla's got the stake.
Tesla's getting the real world data, and they have world-class simulation going on. So we got some breaking news. See if our editor can get this file up, but I'll tell you about it, Matt. So Tesla has officially received approval from the Arizona Department of Transportation to launch its robotaxi service on public roads.
Woo.
Tesla can now legally run a paid autonomous ride-hailing service in Arizona, and it
Here
is
we
not
go.
limited to, it is not limited to a specific city.
Wow. Okay, so it's statewide. That's a pretty big deal. Wow. So where do you think they start? I mean, do you assume they start in Phoenix? I would assume, even if they've got the full authority, presumably they'll start geofence and then just expand it like in Austin, right?
We just went from 5 years out to right now. That's all right. Yeah, Phoenix would make the most sense. There's a ton of people. Phoenix is still pretty spread out. Waymo's been operating in Chandler, which I believe is very close to Phoenix or part of Phoenix, for a very long time. I'm really anxious to see Tesla's doing the robotaxi thing on the highway. Waymo is starting to operate on the highway. It's like a beta thing they're doing with their riders now. But I want to see Tesla get on the highway, just rip the Band-Aid off. Let's go. Let's get in more cities. Let's make it happen, Tesla. Let's go. Don't let Waymo eat your lunch. You don't want them to have like the appetizer. Go in there, get the appetizer, get the entree, get the dessert, the after dinner drinks. Let's go, Tesla. Come on.
Everything, the whole meal. I mean, I'm probably sounding like a broken record because I've said this many times in the past, but like I don't understand why they keep pouring money into Waymo. Like the
Google
technology, yeah, Google, yeah.
Mhm.
I mean the technology is cool. I will give them that, but like at scale, how can they compete? Like they've got to strip so much cost out of this, and like even if they're successful in bringing the cost down from, it was rumored to be over like 150,000 per vehicle before.
Right.
Assuming they can chop that in half to 75,000, it's like
Mhm.
okay, you're still 3 times more expensive than the Cybercab.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of depreciation. Like math that
It's
out for a little bit. Run run
yeah.
those numbers. Like I get you just have
If
to
it
assume
costs
Tesla.
50,000 more, you got to pay for that $50,000 over the course of 150,000 miles. Like at a certain point, people are not going to want to get in that car that has 150,000 butt sweats in it. Like that's not, those cars start to stink. Like it's not a pleasant experience.
I think
Um,
somebody should clip 150,000 butt sweats out, and we can just have that out of context.
that's right.
Well, but you're right. Like I think in order for Waymo to be successful, I think you have to have Tesla not be successful, or they can somehow get cost down to
Mm.
35,000 and just be a slightly more expensive competitor.
Matt,
But I don't think that's a realistic path.
Matt,
Yes.
I'm the co-CEO of Waymo.
All right.
We're focused
What's
on safety, Matt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's
And
reassuring.
safety is going to win. And Tesla's not. Tesla's not safe. So
Oh,
we
it's
need to
almost
keep it
painful.
going. Let's keep
I
it going. This is a big market.
Have you heard the co-CEO interviewed? Because I mean
Yeah.
that's essentially exactly how it went, and it's just like somebody asked exactly this question of like, well, how are you gonna get the costs out? And it's like, well, I can't give away the secret sauce, but I can promise you it's something we're laser focused on. And I'm just like, well, that's an MBA response if I've ever heard one. It's like, yeah, I don't have an answer that I can
I
share
do think
publicly with
Waymo's
you.
going to go to Mhm. I do think Waymo is going to go to a vision only approach. I think they're
Mhm.
going to get rid of a bunch of the sensors. So they're going to get rid of LiDAR and whatever radars they have. I think so. I think they'll go to vision only, and I think they'll go to end-to-end AI approach. Um, I don't know how they develop it in the midstream because I think they're, even though they're adding all these cities, they don't have this huge capacity to make cars. I
Mhm.
think there was like some rumor that Waymo had like 2,500 more cars that they can make or that they were going to get from Jaguar. So like that leaves them with like 4,000 cars, or it wasn't a ton of cars. So they're like dipping their toes into all these cities, and I want Tesla to make a huge splash.
Well, I think that's going to happen. Yeah, I think the timing of it in the short term is certainly up and for question a bit.
Mm,
But I think Tesla's doing all the right things. I mean, the worst thing they could do is try to be too aggressive and to just win right away and do that when the safety stats aren't maybe quite as crystal clear. But if the safety stats are actually that clear that it's safe to actually do this, then I think that's when we can really roll out aggressively because they've got the cars. That's for
mm.
sure.
So all of Arizona is available for people to ride in Tesla. Like, I wonder if they start adding like some kind of service for people to go to Grand Canyon from Phoenix. Do they go with a Robovan? I'm really curious about this. So let's talk a little bit about Tesla Energy.
All
I think
right.
we may or may not have teases at the beginning. So let's wrap it up with Tesla Energy. So they're building a factory for the mega block in Houston, or between Dallas and Houston, or wherever it is. 40 to 60 gigawatt hours per year of capacity, with the transformers, with the Megapack 3, so a new Megapack, not the Megapack 2 XL. So we just had Shanghai come online the beginning of this year. Houston's going to be at the end of next year.
Yeah.
So that's maybe about 21 months apart. What do you think comes next as far as Tesla Energy? Like, what are you excited about?
Well, it's becoming such a significant contributor to profitability already. I think the story is very clearly on, cars and robotaxis and all that. That's where I think mindshare is for most people. But I don't think most analysts covering this really realize that in Q3, Tesla crossed a pretty major milestone of having $1 billion of energy gross margin for the first time. I mean, this was negligible before, and now they're on pace for over a $1 in earnings per share run rate of Tesla Energy margins. So, like, that's a really big deal, especially when you consider how quickly they're growing. So, Shanghai is not fully ramped right now.
No.
They're still in the middle of their ramp. What did we do? 14 gigawatt hours, something like that, this last quarter. When Shanghai is fully ramped, that's going to be 20. So, and then right on the back of that, we're gonna, have additional, openings with this, Texas plant. And also, I think they're probably underselling what Shanghai can do a little bit. That plant, if you look at the amount of space, on the facility, I think it's going to be, larger than the 20 gigawatt hours that is advertised. Or sorry,
Yeah.
the 40 gigawatt hours that's advertised.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so yeah, Elon let it slip when he was first talking about Giga Shanghai that it could triple their capacity, which would mean that they may be able to do 80 gigawatt hours out of that factory. I think batteries may be the limiting factor there, batteries from CATL. So you're going to see a tripling there, and then you have Houston coming online, adding another 40 to 60, so that's a quadruple.
Yeah.
And like, you haven't even scaled yet, so we're looking at maybe a run rate of 50 to 60 in the last quarter. That's kind of where they are now, but quickly getting to 160 or 180 after Houston comes online. And why would they stop at Houston?
Well, they've said that they're not going to. I mean, we don't know specifically what the next plans are, but Elon is talking about terawatt hours per year in the long run. So, but I mean, this is just like if you do some simple math. So, let's say they're doing 160,000, 160 gigawatt hours per year, and if you assume it's well, I messed up my calculator here. If you assume prices come down a little bit, especially in China, so you assume $200 per kilowatt hour on average. So then you're looking at 32 billion of revenue on that part of the business, and at a 25% gross margin, which is lower than what they've been posting historically. That's $8 billion of gross margin contribution coming from the energy business in the not too distant future. And that's like, if you tax affect it, it's a little bit under $2 in earnings per share per year, and growing like crazy. So, I mean, if that's growing at a 50 or something like that, then or 50 PE, that's probably even too low. But if you just slap a 50 on that $2, that's $100 in earnings per share, or that's $100 in share price contribution just from the energy business, and that's only going to grow over time. So yeah, it's like we're in the fun part of the S curve right now on the energy side. Unfortunately, there is a little bit of a lag. Like, I mean, Shanghai started, and basically this time last year, I think the first production was in December, and we're still not at in terms of revenue recognition and gigawatt hours deployed. We're still at like half of capacity probably. So there's gonna be a bit of a lag in how all this stuff comes through, but still the trend is really clear.
Yeah. So this is only the mega factories that we know about.
Yeah. So I'm excited. I know we're going to end the stream soon, but I can't end it before asking you about Nvidia. They report after the bell tomorrow. I have a feeling it's going to be, we've seen a lot of skittishness in the markets, a lot of red the last couple of weeks. What do you think happens with Nvidia? And is that going to be the kind of savior of markets, or are you unsure?
So it's after the bell tomorrow and not today, right?
Yep.
Because it's pretty much unch right now.
Yeah, it's tomorrow.
Will Nvidia save us?
I've got like, I had this idea for a meme, and I was like, oh, it's too much work for me to do, of like, Gandalf the White saying, after 3 days, look to the east or whatever. And then he's there with his, army and on the horse. I feel like you could have Jensen Huang
at the top of the mountain with the white light coming down. Yeah,
exactly. He's going to save all the investors with a strong earnings report.
I don't think Nvidia will disappoint. Maybe people will assume that it's going to be good. They seem to beat by at least $2 billion on the revenue side. If you go back to what Jensen Huang said about where Nvidia is going to be 6 quarters from now, so essentially March of 2027, he's basically saying that Nvidia will have done 367 billion over the past 4 quarters. So that's a lot. That's a lot of revenue.
The market is not giving them credit for that. If you look at the forward estimates, it's not anywhere near that right now.
They're assuming that Nvidia begins to shrink, or gross margin shrink. Competition comes for Nvidia.
There's a lot of skepticism on this whole AI build out right now. I mean, we were talking about this today, of like, there's so much skepticism of like, all this, these circular revenues from all these companies. And the thing that really shocked me, which I shared with you earlier today, was Oracle popped. It was something like 35% after their Q2 earnings report was released, because they disclosed this absolutely massive increase in essentially their backlog. It's a kind of an accounting term which looks at their backlog. It was astronomical, and now we're actually below where they were before that earnings report dropped. And so the market is saying, I just don't believe it. I don't think it's there. I do believe we're going to have this AI build out. I think Nvidia is the prime beneficiary of this. And I think there's some reasonable skepticism of what's going on with the health of the economy overall. But one thing seems pretty clear, is that like we're in a very heated AI arms race, and it doesn't seem like any of these hyperscalers are showing signs of letting up right now.
we are getting real value out of using agentic AI to program. Our lead software developer just announced to our team a report that basically saves our. We have something called a paraplanner here that helps the financial planners at Halter Ferguson. So the financial planners make financial plans. They have someone like a paralegal, but a paraplanner that helps them prepare all the documents and all the information. And they just announced that for each paraplanner, we're saving them 40 days of work per year. So there's this process that has taken them 8 hours per plan in the past, and essentially all they're going to do now is verify the work of the AI. So we're getting value from it. Both things can't be true. They're saying, AI is hype, it's a bubble, it's overblown, and all these jobs are being destroyed because of AI. Like, if jobs are being destroyed or companies are getting cost savings, then that means the AI is working. Now, we don't like the people losing their jobs from it, but we don't want people doing boring and repetitive work like data entry. I don't wish data entry on any of my employees. It's just terrible work. So it is effective. We believe it's real. It's a secular change. This is similar to when we went from typewriter to word processor, or from ledgers to spreadsheets. I think this change is this meaningful. So I know people are worried about like how quickly it's growing and these side deals that are getting made and all that, but we are getting real value from it. These data center providers, they're renting out their GPUs at profitable rates. We're investing in a startup that, instead of going to AWS and paying them $150,000 per month, they went and bought their own computers and paid like $750,000, and are putting those at Rackspace and only paying $2,500 a month to have them at Rackspace. So the data center providers are doing just fine. It's just I think it's a bunch of nonsense. And even old GPUs are being used for inference. So maybe they're not being used for training. Michael Burry is going to come out with something big in about a week. Maybe it'll come out right before our live stream. That'd be pretty sweet. We don't think this is going away. I think there was too much margin. People were gambling too much. They were maybe going too crazy with options, or just putting all this money in like the crypto data centers and the quantum computing and all this stuff, and they just put way too much money into it, way too much margin. I think that's why we've sold off. I think some of that steam is coming off, but this AI boom is real, and it's a secular change, and we don't think it's going away.
Yeah. So in the short term, anything can happen. I mean, Nvidia could have amazing results and the market still sells off. So, anything can happen in the short term. We've seen this with Tesla plenty of times, especially in the past, where they post some banger results and the stock would sell off. So maybe Jensen's not going to be Gandalf the White here, but I think the secular trend is still very much something that we believe in and we're invested around. So not investment advice, but that's how we're thinking about things.
Sorry about how crappy the stream might have been on YouTube. There's been some issues with the internet or Cloudflare or whatever today. Lots of new AI models coming out. I think people are messing with those new models, seeing how those are. Grok 4.1, you got Gemini 3. This is something weird in the air with the internet. I will tease something, Matt.
Ooh, you got my attention.
I think there's a very interesting angle with the Elon pay package, and I'd like to do a deep dive with you on that.
All right. Well, you gave me the cold shoulder when I asked if I may meet you, but yeah, I'll do we'll cozy up. We'll go through the pay package together and we'll go over all those details. I think there's a pretty interesting kernel there that does warrant some nerdy unpacking. So we'll try to get a video out on that shortly.
He's Matt Smith. I'm Bradford Ferguson. We're Rebellionaire. You might be watching us on Farzad. Sorry about the crappy stream, but we'll be back next week to dive into more Tesla and AI and all that fun stuff. Take care. Bye for now.
Bye for now.